A cupcake called Button. Button was a cupcake. Not a particularly fancy cupcake, nor even a very big cupcake. Button was just sort of average. Which was okay. As far as he was concerned, he was a very fine cupcake. Unfortunately, not all the other baked goods in the bakery felt the same way. Some of them were mean and called him a muffin or a bad cupcake. Naturally, this hurt his feelings and made him feel sad. If only somebody would come to the bakery and choose me, thought Button. That would show those meanies that are horrible to me. But unfortunately, people came into the bakery throughout the day, and they chose rolls and donuts, bear claws and brownies, baguettes and croissants, and gingerbread people by the bagful. And nobody chose the cupcake called Button. Button realized that it would be closing time soon, and so he stared desperately out of the window, just willing somebody to arrive and choose him. Please, 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 he muttered under his breath. Just as he said this, a small boy appeared in the window, looking hungrily at all the baked goods on display. His eyes fell upon Button and lit up, and Button knew he'd finally been chosen. But just as the boy's hand touched the door handle to the bakery, something extraordinary happened in the sky above. A strange dark blue shadow spread out across the sky, and something began to lower itself towards the surface of the planet. The boy looked up and saw this unidentified flying object getting closer. He screamed in terror, letting go of the handle, and ran for home. And all Button the cupcake could do was watch. Not too far away, Eleanor and Evelyn were walking along the sidewalk when they too noticed the dark shadow in the sky. It was obvious to the two girls that it was some kind of spaceship, but they also noticed a much nearer, smaller craft trailing white smoke. "I think it's going to crash," said Eleanor, pointing to the tinier craft. "It looks like it's out of control," stated Evelyn. And as she spoke, the craft changed direction suddenly and angled sharply towards them. It struck the street surface further up the road in a bright shower of sparks, bounced several times, then ground to a halt just a short distance from the two of them. It all happened so quickly that they hadn't even had the time to think about running away. Eleanor tried to see if anyone was inside. "Do you think someone's hurt in there?" she asked her friend. "Oh dear, suppose they are," said Evelyn. "We must try to help." They rushed forward just as the small craft's hatch popped open to reveal a badly damaged robot behind the controls. It struggled to turn its head as the girls approached. "Are you all right?" asked Evelyn urgently. "Beware," said the robot. "Glupeus is coming." "Who's Glupeus?" asked Eleanor, just as the huge shadow of the larger spacecraft swept over them. "Is Glupeus in that?" asked Evelyn. "Yes," said the robot. "He wants this." The robot held up a ruby-red crystal. "That's pretty," admitted Eleanor. "That it may be," acknowledged the robot. "But it is also one of the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, and it must not fall into the hands of Glupeus." The robot held out the crystal. "Take it." Eleanor wasn't sure if she should, but it looked as if the robot would drop it if she did it. As she took the crystal into her hands, the robot sagged forward and became still. But there was no time to worry about the robot any longer because the much larger craft was descending right on top of them. Long landing struts emerged from its hull and the craft touched down upon Earth. It was so large, it covered most of the neighborhood. Above them, a hatch opened and a creature began to float downwards on a beam of bright blue light. It was a gooey, squidgy slime monster, and it was staring right at them. "That must be Glupeus," said Eleanor in alarm. "It wants the crystal. We'll have to run away," urged Evelyn. "Wait," said Eleanor urgently. "The robot said the crystal was a weapon. What do you suppose it does?" "I don't know," screeched Evelyn. "We need to hurry." Glupeus touched down on the road surface and stared at them with its large yellow eye. "Hand me the crystal," it demanded in a gurgling voice. "We'd better do what it says," says a frightened Evelyn. "Never!" shouted a defiant Eleanor. She clutched the crystal tight in her hand and felt its power transfer into her body. She began to glow with a crimson light. "Ha! Look, Evelyn, I'm a superhero." "Foolish earthling," sneered Glupeus. "If you will not give it to me, I shall take it." And it blasted a beam of golden energy from its large yellow eye, knocking Eleanor backwards. "Eleanor!" screamed Evelyn, fearing for her friend. But somehow, the red glow of the crystal had protected Eleanor, and she rose to her feet. "Let's see how you like it," said Eleanor, and pointed her closed fist, holding the crystal right at the slime monster. A beam of red energy lanced forward and struck Glupeus in its middle, sending an oozy blue slime to splatter against the house behind. Glupeus was furious at this, and once again fired his eye beam at Eleanor. "Oh, do be careful," wailed Evelyn, ducking behind a parked car as Glupeus and Eleanor traded blasts. But Glupeus was no fool. It had seen where Evelyn was hiding, and it knew that Evelyn meant something to Eleanor. Instead of firing its next beam at Eleanor, it instead aimed it at the car Evelyn was hiding behind. "Look out!" screamed Eleanor as the car was blasted sideways to reveal the cowering Evelyn behind. Eleanor leapt into action, zooming to her friend's rescue, just as Glupeus let loose another lethal blast. But the slime monster was too late. Eleanor snatched Evelyn's hand and pulled her clear, dropping her to safety on a nearby lawn. "I will simply blast her there instead," gurgled Glupeus. But as he sent his next powerful blast towards Evelyn, something unexpected happened. Now it was Evelyn's turn to glow red. Eleanor had slipped the crystal into Evelyn's hand when she'd rescued her. For the next few minutes, Evelyn and Eleanor battled the slime monster along the street, swapping the crystal to keep Glupeus confused. But it was tiring work, and Evelyn and Eleanor had no experience at fighting slimy blue space creatures. Slowly but surely, Glupeus wore them down, until with one terrific blast, it sent Evelyn's glowing red body crashing through the window of a store. Eleanor and Evelyn were exhausted, but Glupeus looked as if it had barely got started. It slithered up to the broken store window and said, "Now, hand me the crystal, and if you're lucky, I won't destroy your planet when I leave." Evelyn got herself onto her knees and opened the fist that had been holding the crystal, but her hand was empty. "Oh no," she said, on the verge of tears. "The crystal! I've lost it!" Outside the store, Eleanor kept her distance, but she knew the pair of them had lost the battle. Without the crystal, they couldn't fight this alien threat. "I'm losing my patience," snapped Glupeus. "Well, you're just going to have to wait a little longer," said a tiny defiant voice. all eyes turned to a smashed cabinet, on top of which stood a heroic little cupcake. In the frosting on top of the cupcake's head was wedged the crystal. "What in all creation are you supposed to be?" said the amazed Glupeus. "I'm Button," said Button. "And do you know what? I'm fed up with bullies." He leapt off of the cabinet and shot forward like a streak of red lightning, straight through the slime monster. Glupeus roared with anger, but before he could turn and face Button, the heroic little cupcake struck again and again and again and again. Each time he zapped through Glupeus, he sent blue slime splattering, leaving the slime monster with no time to recover. And what's more, Glupeus was getting smaller with each strike. Again and again, Button sent more and more blue slime flying until all that was left of Glupeus was a puddle of blue slime and a big yellow eye. "Arrgh! What have you done to me?" it wailed. "I can't move!" Evelyn appeared with a big plastic trash bin while Eleanor grabbed a nearby mop. Then, with a few sweeps, they swept the remains of Glupeus into the bin and slammed on the lid. "We did it!" laughed Eleanor. "Well, really Button did it," said Evelyn. "You're the real hero today." "What about this crystal?" said Button. "Does somebody want it back?" "I think that belongs to you now," said Eleanor. "You've earned it." And so, that's how a not very big, not very fancy, rather average cupcake became a most unusual superhero. And nobody ever called him a muffin ever again.
So that you don't miss a single episode, just click that subscribe button.